Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. Hopefully your lunch was good. I just need to recognize that Sask Water sponsored that lunch, so I hope it was all good for everybody. As you make your way back in front of the computer, I have the distinct honor of introducing our uh, guest speaker today, Stuart Knight, for the he has his keynote presentation on the choice 5 decisions all leaders make. Stuart has written, produced, and starred in shows that have been seen by over 1 million people and each year speaks around the world, helping some of the planet's biggest companies reach new levels of success. As an international traveler, Stuart Knight writes a sought-after blog, hosts a hit podcast, and shares videos that are seen by over 12,000 people every week. He is the critically acclaimed author of 2 books, and today Stuart Knight encourages people to boycott what they thought and join a new revolution in thinking. Without further ado, I'll hand the floor over to Stuart Knight.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. It is my absolute pleasure to be hanging out with all you fine people from Saskatchewan. Welcome to my office. All right. I feel like at some point in your life, everybody should have a moment to be in my office. And here we are. I know blue is clearly my favorite color, but I'm really glad that everyone's tuning in today. And I'm just going to throw a couple of quick disclaimers out there, things I'm not normally needing to say pre-pandemic, but I have to say them when we're on these Zoom calls. Just a few things. I use an external mic when I'm speaking on Zoom. So if you have earphones, it's not usually a problem. But for those of you who may need to turn up the volume, feel free to do so. I do get loud, as you can hear, but when you're using an external microphone, it does sometimes need a little bit of a tweak on the volume, but I'm sure you know how to do that yourself. We're going to be hanging out with each other for the next 60 minutes, 75 minutes, and I'm not going to have any slides. How crazy is that? I know these people from Toronto, you got to kind of think twice about dealing with them when it comes to business, but I'm just really not much of a slides guy. I really prefer to just talk to you, to make this real, to make this an authentic conversation, and to make this something where I get you participating throughout the presentation by adding comments into the chat column or by throwing in some of your questions in there. And before you know it, 60 to 75 minutes has just flown by, and ideally everybody has learned something new. Now, I'm not just going to speak to you about the work that you do within your municipality, although that will, of course, be part of what I speak about today. I'm going to speak to you also about just your personal life. Because I don't know about you, but I have been talking about COVID nonstop with so many people for the last 3 or 4 months. And while it is, of course, an important conversation we have to have, and yes, I will speak about it today, I feel like sometimes we just need to break free from that and talk about a few other things from time to time. So I want to get you thinking today about the decisions that we make as leaders, not just in the work that we do, but as I'm speaking, I really want to get you thinking about how the things I'll be teaching you and sharing with you apply to your personal life as well. As a mom or as a dad or as a friend or as just a member of your community. Okay, so don't think it has to be all about work, because I know you've been speaking a lot about work this morning, and I've been tuning in and listening to some of your speakers, and they've all been fantastic, super knowledgeable, clearly. But I want you to know this applies to both parts of your life. Okay, so another little thing is that if you do have any questions or if you have any comments that you want to share, please make sure you put those into the Q&A or into the chat box. And at the end, if we have a little bit of extra time, I'll go to the Q&A and I'll maybe field a few of those questions that managed to come through. I don't actually do it during my presentation, but rather do it at the end of the presentation, just to make sure I keep you on time. Okay, so are you ready to get started? I got to tell you, I'm so happy that I can't see any of your faces, because I swear to God, I'd be so jealous here being an Ontarian, looking at all you people from Saskatchewan, and all of you probably have really great haircuts. You're probably all coiffed, you're all shaved around the ears, you don't have this big helmet head that I've got going on, and I'm getting close to jumping on a plane and coming there just for a haircut. But you all look great, I'm sure of it. So today I'll be speaking to you about something called 5 decisions all leaders make. It's the choice. And that's really what it comes down to. I find that so often in life, and I'm sure that you can relate to this, time really just flies by so quickly. Before you know it, it's Friday. Before you know it, the weekend's over. Before you know it, in my case, I'm 47 in 2 weeks. Yes, I know, I look like I'm 46. Everyone makes that mistake. But time flies, doesn't it? And I find that as that time flies, so often it's difficult to really get involved in the decisions that we're making. In fact, usually we're responding to everything that happens to us. It's usually like deflecting all of life's challenges. Whereas true leaders, they really understand the importance of stopping, just pausing, and literally thinking about the decisions that they make, because they know those decisions really have a big impact on everything around them. And so, whether you are a mayor watching this, you're a city councilor, maybe you're one of the VPs of the organization, perhaps you are an admin, it doesn't really matter. You see, we're all leading our own personal lives. And by leading our own personal lives, we are influencing the lives of the people around us, whether it's a constituent, whether it's a husband, a wife, or a partner, whether it's a kid, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's somebody that we coach in the hockey team. We are always making decisions that influence the person that we are and the person that we will become. And if we stop and really just think about what those decisions are, and if we stop and ask ourselves if there's maybe a better decision that we could make or a different type of decision, perhaps we could be the ones who put ourselves into greater control. Perhaps we could be the ones that dictate the way life unfolds as opposed to it always being dictated to us. And this is something that I've really learned as an entrepreneur. As you heard in my intro there, I have been an entrepreneur now for about 25 years. And in that time, I've had the chance to speak to over 1 million people. And I don't say that to impress you. I just say that to say that, in my life, I've had a lot of experiences where I meet people who are really confused as to why they have the life they have. They're really perplexed as to how life has unfolded the way that it has for them. And I've often just said to them, well, what are the decisions that you've made? And they look at me like I've got two heads. And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, the decisions that you've made obviously have led you to the life you have today, whether it's good things or bad things, whether it's success or non-success or happiness or sadness. And when people hear that, at first they can sometimes get angry, but quite often you realize in the moment that, yes, I guess it was me. I guess I am the one who's choosing how things will unfold in my life. And to me, once you really learn that, and once you, I guess, come to terms with that, it's got to be one of the most exciting things, because all of a sudden you literally get to wake up every morning going, okay, what do I want to do today differently? And that's really my goal for you folks today, is that I want to get you thinking about your life just a little bit differently. One of the subjects I speak about today might pertain to you more than one of the others. However, no matter what the case is, I'm going to ask that you keep your energy up, because we've just had lunch. I'm going to ask you that you keep your attention on the screen. And I'm also going to ask you to write things down. Once in a while, you might have an idea that you didn't think of. Write it down. Once in a while, I might ask you to say something to yourself. Write it down. No one's watching you. No one's marking you. And yes, if you want, you get to slack off. However, this presentation is going to be as good as you choose to make it based on how much you choose to participate. And there's always little nuggets that are ready to be had. There's little aha moments that are just available to every single one of us if we just let them surface. So as I ask you to participate during this presentation, I do ask you to write certain things down, because at the end of it, you'll have some pretty cool notes that you can look back at and refer to in the future. Okay, so let's just dive right into it, okay? Are you ready to get started? I hope you are. Let me hear you say, yeah! Okay, it's really weird to do that in your office and not hear anybody doing it. The part that I do like about that is that some people did do it. And this is one of those moments where you got to figure out just how weird it feels to yell out the word, yeah, at your own desk. Or maybe you have a daughter or a son walking past you as you're doing it, and them realizing this is the reason why mom and dad are not cool. Whatever it is, keep participating. I want you to yell out and have some fun with me. Okay, so I'll be speaking to you about the 5 decisions that I've really noticed leaders making in their lives to bring themselves to greater levels of success and to bring themselves to greater levels of happiness. And when I first created this presentation, it was all based on the observations that I had made from other leaders, as well as the observations I've made of myself of decisions that I've had to make in order to reach a certain level of success and happiness, and as well as just research I've done on this topic. And as I looked at these decisions, to be completely frank with you, I noticed that right out of the gate, there were about actually 32 decisions that I had really delineated as being the types of decisions that we actually have to make in order to be successful at the work that we do and happy in life. But if I were to speak about 32 decisions, we'd find ourselves quickly in a position where you would have to listen to me for at least 7 or 8 hours. So I had to whittle it down. And I finally whittled it down to 5 decisions that all leaders make. And these are the 5 that while they're not the only decisions, I think are the most important. Okay, so let's go right into it. The first decision that all leaders really have to make in order to reach a level of success that they want to reach and to be happy is to take pride in their life. Now think about that. Taking pride in what you do, taking pride in who you are, and in fact, doing it deliberately. You see, a lot of people, what they do is they make the decision, and they make the mistake, I would say, in life of waiting for somebody to tell them how great they are before they really start feeling pride. They wait for a constituent to send them an email and tell them how they're the greatest mayor, or they're the greatest city councilor, or you're the greatest mom, you're the greatest dad. And then all of a sudden their chest swells out and they're like, oh, I'm so good at what I do. I'm so important. And they go out there and they do their job better that day. You see, leaders do it the exact opposite. They don't wait for someone to tell them how great they are. They realize how important what they do is in order to be great. They don't need the award. They set themselves up to get the award because they know what they do is important. And to me, it's such an attractive quality when you see somebody who takes real pride in what they do. And it's a very ugly thing, quite frankly, when they don't. You know, as a motivational speaker, I've heard obviously quite a few motivational quotes in my time. And one of my favorites is from Martin Luther King. And when Martin Luther King talks about pride, he says, you know, back in the 60s, if a man is called upon to be a street sweeper, he should sweep those streets as Michelangelo painted, as Beethoven composed music, or as Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep those streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. And the reason I've always loved that quote is because it really, to me, captures the essence of what it means to take pride in what you do. Because let's face it, quite often when you see somebody sweeping the streets, they have an attitude about what they do that is just get it done. This is just a job. This just pays the bills. This is not what I want to do with my life. And that is a choice. Whereas I've seen in other situations where you see people who do jobs like that, and they do it with a completely different bounce in their step. Like what if, for example, the street sweeper didn't see themselves as just somebody cleaning the streets, but they actually stopped and realized that when they do clean the streets, that it does invite people out of their houses. In fact, maybe they read an article, and in fact, this has actually been researched, is that when people have cleaner neighborhoods, they are more likely to leave their homes and to come out and socialize with other neighbors. And research has shown that when people come out of their homes and actually get to know their neighbors, that quite often crime rates in those neighborhoods are lower than in neighborhoods where people don't know each other. So all of a sudden now that street sweeper, when they go to work that day, if they think about that first, they don't see themselves as a street sweeper anymore, but rather they see themselves as somebody who fights crime, somebody who solves crime, someone who is a crime stopper. And that is a choice. In fact, a beautiful example of this, I saw this in your own province of Saskatchewan one time. It was February. I was flying in for a speech. I got there around 10 o'clock at night. I'm walking across the platform, the area within the airport to get to the escalator that goes down to go get my bags, I believe it was. And I see this man who's a security guard, and it's his job to make sure people know where they're going. And we all know in airports when somebody has that job, they normally just kind of just do this. They just point, right? Not this guy in Saskatchewan, okay, not this guy in Regina. This guy, as soon as I started approaching him, he started yelling out, wow, look at you, my friend. How are you doing? I got to say, I love the color of your pants. This is what he said. I kid you not, true story. I mean, who knew that hot pink was such a big color in Saskatchewan? No, you know what? It was, I think I had these kind of mauve, purple, kind of different colored pair of pants, nothing crazy. And yet this guy automatically made me feel really good. And then he shook my hand and actually gave me a high five and said, welcome to Saskatchewan. And then I went down the escalator. And as I was going down the escalator, I overheard, must have been a big group of people coming up behind me because I overheard him yell out to the group. He said, look at this gorgeous group of people coming into Regina. Are you guys ready to have a good time? Now, I should probably remind you, it was February, okay? February in Saskatchewan. No offense, but no one's looking to have a good time. Everyone's just looking to get to their house and survive. You know what I'm talking about? But this guy, he took pride in what he did. He knew he could just do it as a Joe job, or he can actually use his job as a way to make people smile and to make people happy. And by doing it that way, he changes the world. And that's what we have to remember. And I've seen this so many times in my own work. My goodness, I've had so many actors I've worked with over the years who they stub their toe, or they get a little tickle in their throat, or they look through the curtains and they see that we don't have a big audience that night. And they're like, oh, I don't want to try tonight. I don't want to be my best. I've got a tickle in my throat. I stubbed my toe. There's only 20 people out there. And when you go out on stage with these people, you know what it's like in life to go out with people out there on the stage of life, people who don't actually care as much about what they do as you do. It's embarrassing. It's hard. It's difficult to work with these people. And I used to hate being on stage with those individuals because I'd be giving it my all and they wouldn't. And the reason I'd be giving it my all is because for years, I've always been trying to practice the art of meditation and visualization before I go on stage. And everybody has a stage. And for me, I've done this today with you, even though I can't see you, even though I haven't got the interaction with each other today, I still do it. Usually I do it in the shower, okay? I sit there and I close my eyes and I just get quiet. And I think about you, okay? Yes, you and I have had very intimate moments in the shower today. And I close my eyes and I think about you. And I think about your life. And I think about the person you are. I think about your fears and your concerns. I think about the conversations you have with your family around the Thanksgiving dinner table. I think about you as a person, not just an individual who's a number in the participants category on this page, but rather a real human being. And the more I think about you, the more I begin to swell with excitement and pride, knowing that I get to hopefully influence your life in some sort of positive way. And the more I feel that, the more excited I am to do what I do, and then nothing can stop me from doing it. The only thing that I'm focused on now is being my absolute best. And to give you an example of that, in fact, I'll never forget one time when I was going on stage during a show, and I was running out on stage during this one little area, which was quite dark. And a person by the name of Jason was running off stage in the exact same corridor that I was running on stage onto. Now, this individual, Jason, had taken a wrong turn. He wasn't supposed to be heading towards me in the dark. I should also point out to you right now that Jason and I are also the exact same height. So you've got two grown men running toward each other full tilt, and you know what happens. Bam, we hit each other face to face. Now, he was just a little bit shorter than me, so his forehead hit me right in the eye. Cut my eye right open, and I stumbled on stage. And all of a sudden, the lights came up, and I could feel the blood coming down my face. And I thought to myself, well, this is a much more than stubbing your toe. And I could have said, folks, you know what, we're going to have to call the show tonight. But that didn't even cross my mind. And the reason it didn't cross my mind is because I'd already, before the show, thought about how lucky I was to be doing it in the first place. I'd already swelled with so much pride that there was nothing that was going to stop me from doing it. So I went backstage, I taped my eye and came back out, did the show, and then went to the hospital and got 4 stitches above my eye. Now, I tell you this story just as an example, is that when we put ourselves in the peak state of mind, when we put ourselves in a place where we're focused on how we influence the lives of other people, it dramatically influences the way we do it. And it doesn't matter what we do for a living. Sometimes people say, oh, well, you know what? You're a motivational speaker. You get to get up on stages around the world and you get to speak to people about their lives. Yeah, I can see why you take pride in what you do, but my life is not necessarily as glamorous. I get that all the time. And I hate when I hear that, to be honest with you. Because for me, I think it doesn't matter what you do. In fact, I was speaking to a bunch of people in Vancouver last year as an example of this. And these individuals, they had a job where they basically sell hair products to hair salons. Okay, so I said to them, I go, if you want, you could choose to see your job as just a job where you go out there and you sell hair products to hair salons. And for that reason, you could say to the owners of these hair salons, oh, hey, I've got this product. If you were to buy it, it would be really great for your customer's hair and make it really shine. Okay, you can do that. Or I said, if it was me, I would really think about how someone feeling good about their hair because of my product might change their life. So I would picture, let's say, some woman coming into a hair salon and getting her hair done, and your product is used. And then she walks out and she feels extra attractive that day. And because of that, she calls her girlfriends and she says, let's go out for a drink. They say, okay, let's go out for a drink. So they go out for a drink. And then while she's sitting at the bar having a chat with her friends, she allows herself to hold that gaze with that man on the other side of the bar just a little bit longer than she normally would. And he starts feeling good about himself. Okay, well, maybe I've got something here. He gets up and comes on over, and he sits down and introduces himself, and they have a chat. And that chat leads to a date. And one date leads to another date. And many, many dates later, maybe a couple of years down the road, who knows? Maybe they're married and now have a child. That's the way I would picture my product, eventually having a result in. And if you think that, I said, you'll no longer walk into a hair salon and say, hey, I've got this great product. You should buy it. It'll make your hair, the hair shine of your customers. I said, no. If you start thinking about what I'm talking about, you'll walk into hair salons and you'll say, hey, you need to buy this product because if you don't, future babies won't be born. And obviously I'm having some fun with you. But the point is that it always comes down to the way we choose to look at what we do. And here we are in the middle of a pandemic. And you have to ask yourself whether or not you're going to be focused on all the negative or if you're going to pause before you go to work every day and focus on the positive. The positive of what you do, the positive of how you influence the lives of other people, the positive of how your job allows you to put food on the table for your children or maybe to be able to pay for college or university one day. You see, whatever it is, there's so many amazing things that come out of your work and that come out of your life, and yet we don't pause to think about it. And so my first challenge to everybody here today is this. If you're watching this right now, in a second, I'm going to ask you to start firing some things into our screen where we've got the chat column. Okay, start sharing things that you're proud of. Okay, think about that right now. What are you actually proud of? Are you proud of the fact that you engage your constituents in a special way? Are you proud of the fact that you're a great listener and you make people feel like they're heard? Are you proud of the fact that you do everything you can to really help the people that you manage or the people that work with you to be the best that they can possibly be? Are you proud of the fact that you are maybe a single mom and you work from home and you're doing the best that you possibly can and you're raising great kids in the process? What are you proud of? Fire it off into the chat column. Don't be shy. I want to hear what it is that you're actually proud of, because it's these things that really influence the way that we live our lives. It's these things that really influence the way that we show up every single day. And I want to hear what those things are for you. I'm looking here. So I've got Jocelyn. She's proud of my family, my job, my community pride. So that's an amazing thing. Like, so often we don't think about the multiplier effect or the butterfly effect, as they call it that, right? Where we end up doing something and we don't think about the 3 or 4 steps down the line of how it influences people. But your community is being influenced by decisions that you make today. And you may never meet the people that you're influencing, but it's those individuals that really are better off because of something you did. The strength of our community, supporting each other, and the school we have in our town. That was from Heather. So thank you, Heather, for that. That's great. Like, the school, I mean, think about it. When you go back to your life of being somebody who at one point was in school when you were a little kid, we all have memories of how somebody influenced our life in school. I can still remember Mr. Yo to this day, grade 5, and the way that he influenced my life. Mr. Snell, grade 6, the way he influenced my life. Mr. Cameron, he's my music teacher, the way he influenced my life. These are people that I all knew before the ages of 12. And so what are we doing? What are those people doing in order to be the best that they can be? They're stopping and thinking about how they influence the lives of other people. Sandra, I'm proud of my farm life and raising my farm family. Sandra, I got to tell you, I was so fortunate to be able to do, before the pandemic, a cross-country tour with Farm Credit Canada. And the people I was working with are actually, ironically, from Saskatchewan as well. And I got a chance to meet more farmers in about 6 months than I've ever met in my entire life. And that's saying a lot because I grew up in a small town with farmers. And it was incredible to see how proud these people were in the work that they do and how that work influences the lives of other people, how it creates jobs for other people, how it feeds people, how it nourishes people. And it's that kind of thing that changes. Thinking about that is what changes the way they do it. And so thank you for those thoughts. I'll go to one last one here from Kathy. I'm proud of my family, granddaughters, and the amazing people in my community who are always there to help no matter what is going on in their lives. I'll just pick one part of that. Your granddaughters, Kathy, what a great thing to mention. And to think about how you choose to show up in their life and to realize that you get to influence the life of a young person and help them become something that maybe they wouldn't have become had you not shown up as your best self. And so this is my challenge. Thank you for those comments. I'm going to be asking you guys for some more later on. This is my challenge to everyone watching this right now. Let's really stop before we go to work, before we get out of even bed. Let's really take a moment to think about how we get to influence the lives of other people before we do that work, before we show up in life. Because if we just take 2 or 3 minutes to just stop and think about how we influence the lives of other people, it will completely change the way we show up in life. And so my challenge to you is to become the actor, because everyone has a stage. And before you go on stage every day, close your eyes and just think about how you influence the lives of others. And think of it in 3 or 4 degrees of separations away. And all of a sudden, you will see a brand new person showing up in life every day. And you can do that with your work, and we can do that with your friendships. You can do that with your relationships as well. Okay, so that's the first decision that all leaders make. We really need to focus on the importance of recognizing how what we do makes a difference in the lives of other people. Let's go into number 2, okay? Number 2 is fear. Okay, fear. It's amazing to me, the subject of fear. Nobody ever seems to really talk about it, and yet it's got to be one of the biggest influencers of our life. It's the one thing that either makes us not make decisions or causes us to make decisions that are bad for us. And yet, when you get into conversations with other people, it's not like fear gets brought up in the subject matter, right? We talk about the weather, we might talk about farming, we talk about politics, but we don't talk about fear. It's not like when you see your friend who you haven't seen for a long time, you don't say to that person, "Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I haven't seen you for a while. So what's scaring the crap out of you these days?" We don't say this to people. If we did say this to people, they'd probably turn back to us and say, you are scaring the crap out of me these days. But why don't we talk about it? In fact, you know what's even more interesting? We don't not just talk about fear, we also don't speak about the fact that fear is actually just a belief system. To me, that's even more fascinating. In fact, the dictionary definition of fear proves this. Okay, here it is. If you don't want to Google it right now, it is the unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something will cause pain or will be of threat. Even the dictionary definition of fear says that it is a belief system. And so, what are we doing to ourselves because of that belief system? How are we negatively influencing our lives? And what would our lives look like if we didn't have as much fear as we do? Now, before I go any further, I want to just kind of get you thinking about something. When I talk about fear, I'm not just talking about fear. I'm talking about anxiety. I'm talking about worry. And I'm also talking about stress. These are all interchangeable words. So what are we doing to ourselves when we stress about all these different kinds of things? Things that we've made up in our minds. And I mean, think about it, right? We're doing it all the time. Have you ever been to a party and you're coming back from that party and you turn to your husband, your wife, your partner, and you start talking about somebody you both met, and you make up this really elaborate story about who they are, how much money they've got, what kind of attitude they have, maybe some of their philanderings they've been involved with in their life. We make up very elaborate stories only to find out as we get to know them that everything we thought to be true was never even true. And are we not doing that during this pandemic? How many times have you or somebody you've known who's had these really unrealistic fears and anxieties about what's going to happen? So many people have talked about the idea that this is going to become an apocalypse, right? They've talked about they're going to buy a bunker, they're going to go out there and buy 400 rolls of toilet paper and 60 cans of tuna, and they're going to hunker down and get through the storm. They've turned it into something that is bigger than what it is. And when we do that, we're having a negative influence in our lives. And in fact, let me just say this out loud. Isn't it exhausting? I mean, God, it's so exhausting every day to be stressing and worrying about things that we think are going to happen that never happen. In fact, research has shown, you'll hopefully find this interesting, research has shown that it turns out that 9 out of 10 things that you worry about never come true. On average, 9 out of 10 things that we worry about never even happen. And of course, there's certain people right now that are listening to that statistic and they're thinking to themselves, oh my God, well, if that's true, I wonder what the one thing is going to be that happens. They just want to focus on that. And it's exhausting, and we're allowing it to stop us from becoming the people that we truly are meant to be. And by the way, don't go thinking for 1 second that as somebody who is a professional speaker or somebody who's in the professional development industry or self-development industry, that I don't have fears, that I don't have concerns, or I don't have things that get in my way. My gosh, I stress and I worry all the time. However, when it happens, all I do is start using things that I've learned to do to make sure that it doesn't control me. I make the decision to employ certain types of exercises that will help me get through the fear, the anxiety, and the worry faster so that I can put myself back into control of my life. And that's what I want to get you thinking about today. I'm not trying to eliminate fear, stress, or anxiety or worry in your life. I'm trying to get you to start having the coping mechanisms to do something about it. Because that's something you'll hear me say quite a bit in life these days. I talk to people and I don't ask them how they're coping during this crisis. I ask them how they're COVIDing. It's a word I've made up, yes, but it's something that gets their brain thinking. How are you COVIDing? Okay, because coping is one thing, but COVIDing is a whole other thing. And we all have to realize that when this whole thing is finished, we will look back and we have to understand that some will have COVIDed better than others. So which one do you want to be? And as you're going through this experience, you're going to go through stress and fear and anxiety. But the people who know how to control it better than others will be the ones who COVID better than others. So I talked about these exercises, things that we can do. Well, the great thing here is right now you get a chance to have a shortcut in life, because I've basically done the work for you in the sense that I have been researching so many exercises that a person can do in order to overcome their fears. And out of all the exercises I've ever seen, there's one that to me works the best. And I want you to take it with you today and have it become a new tool in your back pocket for the rest of your life. And what it is called the pain gain exercise. The pain gain exercise, for those of you who are writing that down. Okay, now what is that? It's a very simple exercise. All you do is you take a piece of paper. I'm sure you can find one of those. You take a pen and you write a little line across the top and then a line down the middle. And at the one top left area, you put pain. And then the other side, you write gain. And in the pain column, you write down, what are all the things that I stand to lose by allowing myself to be in a state of stress or worry or fear over this thing? Maybe it's the fear of having a difficult conversation with somebody. Maybe it's the fear of leaving a negative relationship. Maybe it's the fear of moving to a new part of Saskatchewan. Maybe it's the fear of running for office in the first place. So what do I stand to lose by being in fear of doing that thing? And then on the other column, you write down, what are all the things I stand to gain? What are all the bonuses, the positives that could come my way if I wasn't afraid, if I wasn't stressed, if I wasn't worried, and I actually just did the thing? I actually had the difficult conversation. I actually ran for public office. I actually moved to that new part of the world. What do I stand to gain? What do I stand to lose if I don't do it? And once you've finished filling in each column, the answer is easy. All of a sudden, you read one column and you read the other, and your brain goes, okay, clearly I now no longer have any choice. Because what you've done is you've given yourself every single reason to make the choice that is going to be difficult. Yes, it's going to cause you to have some awkward moments and maybe go through a little bit of fear. But by the end of it, you will realize that it was something that you knew you had to do. And it was something that by doing it, it brought you to greater success. It brought you to a greater version of yourself. It brought you to a greater life. Fear is a subject that we should literally be speaking about every single day. And yet it is a subject that most people go their entire lives and never really give a lot of thought to. If you want to be somebody who's different than everybody else, somebody who has a different experience in life, you have to make fear part of your conversation. And yes, it feels uncomfortable. I don't love doing it. But I find that when you do, you're doing the thing that all great leaders do. And that is to recognize that fear, for the most part, is a joke. And it's just a joke they are not willing to play on themselves. And so ask yourself, is this a joke that you want to play on yourself for the rest of your life? One where you just stay paralyzed and you don't move forward? because you're so afraid of what could happen, never really allowing yourself to recognize that what you think could happen has been researched and almost never happens. And to me, that is a life that we end up looking back on and we find ourselves having regrets. And that's something that I don't want for you, and I don't want it for me. It's not easy, but it's an exercise that will really change the game for you. And that is the second decision that we all have to make. Every so often, we have to ask ourselves, what am I afraid of? And what would my life look like if I wasn't being afraid of that thing, and if I actually made the decision to do the thing I want to do? Okay, that's the second decision that all leaders make. All right, third decision that all leaders make. Are you having fun out in Saskatchewan? I'm telling you, I am sweating here in Toronto. The air conditioning is on, doesn't feel like it's working. All right, so the third decision that all leaders make, this might be my favorite one that I speak about, okay? And this is one that as I travel the world and I speak with all kinds of companies and I get to work with some of the biggest leaders out there, it's one that I'm always amazed at that people don't actually utilize as a tool to be more successful and to be happier in life. And it's almost like there's this gift in the room. And I'm always like, do you not see that gift in the room? It's like, it's right there. You just got to walk over. You just got to open it. And yet people don't even know it's there. And what's that gift? It's the gift of creativity. Creativity. You will be amazed at the role that creativity can play in your life if you choose to let it. Okay, so let me give you an example of how I've done that in the past in my life to lead into what I'm talking about here. So when I was 24 years old, I was about $25,000 in debt. It was student debt. I had just graduated from Wilfrid Laurier University, and I had accumulated student debt around $25,000. I had a degree in business and economics, and I was being groomed to go out there and get a job in the corporate world, and that was something I was expecting to do. However, a few years earlier, I'd been really turned on by these ideas of self-development, professional development. I thought it was so cool, and I thought maybe there would be an opportunity for me to have a job in that field. Of course, I told my parents this idea that I wanted to go out there and become a motivational speaker, and that's when they disowned me. They said, thank you for accruing all this debt, and thank you for going out there and spending 4 years at school, not to use it at all. However, I was planning on using it. They just didn't know that yet. So I had this idea. I want to go out there and I want to create a show at that time for youth. Okay. I wanted to speak in high schools and elementary schools and at camps and things like that. And so I didn't know anyone who was a motivational speaker. I didn't know anybody who was even an entrepreneur. I came from a very typical working class family, immigrant parents, the whole deal. And so I didn't know who to turn to. And so I went on the internet. And as I was on the internet searching out these different youth leadership conferences, I started noticing that every one of these websites had a column or a page that said, it was like a posting board and said, do you have any ideas of what we can do to make our conference that much better? And that was when I became a guy named Tony. Yes, Tony, who happened to be my best friend at the time and actually is one of my best friends today, 25 years later, I think it is now. Tony, 23 years later, I should say, Tony is an individual who I decided that I was going to pretend I was. And so I went to all these different websites and I started posting on their posting board saying, if you guys want your conference to be amazing, you need to get this guy named Stuart Knight, best motivational speaker out there. And so I called my friend Tony and I said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to post these little posts and I'm just going to give them your email address. And you'll say in the post, if you want to get more information about him, give me an email. And so that's what I started doing day after day, week after week, posting everywhere I could. And guess what? Tony started getting the emails and he started forwarding those emails to me. And I started booking gigs. And of course, that's not good enough. You have to be good when you show up to the gig, but it's what got me through the door. And as I got through the door, I started getting engagements. And the more engagements led to more engagements. And then from there, eventually I got to the point where I was actually running a successful business. That would have never happened had I not come up with a creative way of getting that foot through the door. Here's another example. When I was 30 years old, I started writing motivational musicals. Now, I knew that I wanted to not just do a 3-week run or a 4-week run on a theater show, but rather I wanted this to be a show that happened every Saturday night. And so what I did is that I started going out to these different theaters, and I found out very quickly, no theater in Toronto will rent you their space for every Saturday night. You have to rent it out for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. So I could have had one of those moments where I just give up on the idea, or I asked myself the question, all right, well, if there was a way to do this, what would it be? And that's when I realized, what if I lived in a theater, right? I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? I know you guys are probably already thinking it. What if I lived in a theater? And so that's where the idea came from. I said, what if I found some old dilapidated loft, which I found, one that nobody wanted. It was 2,600 square feet, a great big space. So what if we built a theater, which we did? We built the stage, we built the lights, and we built the soundboard. We got all the chairs. Next thing you know, on Saturday nights, I was saying to the audience, thanks for coming to the show. Have a great night. They would leave. I'd go to the washroom, brush my teeth, and go to bed. And so once again, I tell you these stories to hopefully make us put a smile on your face and hopefully to get you thinking about how we always have a creative solution to any challenge we face. We're never going to discover what it is unless we ask ourselves the kinds of questions that will get us there. So often I meet people who are convinced that creativity is something that's only reserved for people who know how to paint the Mona Lisa or write legendary love songs or poetry. Yes, those people are creative, but creativity is something that you have to generate within you because it's always there. It's the present in the room. You take someone like Picasso. Okay, here's an individual who would find himself in situations where once in a while he would just be, having a challenge creatively. He just wasn't able to come up with the right way to paint a painting. So did he give up? Did he say that he wasn't creative? No. He just took his shoes off and put them on the opposite feet and went for a walk. You see, he knew he needed to get himself out of that mindset in order to get back into his creative juices. I've done this so many times, for example, with ticketing agents across the world. You go into an airport and you're speaking to a ticketing agent and I say, listen, I need to get to wherever it happens to be. Let's say Los Angeles. I need to get there today. And that person says, oh, well, they're looking at their computer like, sorry, sir, there's no way I can get you to Los Angeles today. All the flights are full. That's when I come back and I'll say, oh, no, absolutely. Of course, I understand. But if there was a way, what would it look like? And that's when the person kind of looks at you like you're crazy. And they're like, I just told you, sir, that there is no way to get to Los Angeles today. You'll have to go tomorrow. And then I'm always very polite. And I always come back and I do the job that I was hoping that they would have done for themselves. I come back and I say, yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah, fully get it. However, if there was some crazy way to get to Los Angeles today, what would that look like? Just for the fun of it. And then they would go back to their computer and they'd be like, well, I mean, you'd have to go backwards from Toronto to another destination and then turn around and go back to Los Angeles. And that's when I come back and I go, okay, go on. And then they go back to their computer and they're like, well, then you'd have to do this and then you'd have to do that. Guess what? Before you know it, they found a solution and I'm going to Los Angeles that day. And this is when you do this for people, you get the opportunity to see human beings using this beautiful thing called the brain. Everyone has one, but I've learned not everyone uses it. And that is a choice. It's a choice that whether or not we want to use our amazing brain or not. And think about how amazing it is. The brain put a man on the moon. A brain managed to figure out a way to put a plane in the sky. I mean, did you know that when a plane is in the sky, it's fully loaded with passengers and luggage? Did you know it's 700,000 pounds? Okay, now the people who are scared of flying, they love that statistic, I find. 700,000 pounds, right? This is what the brain has managed to do. So if the brain can do these kinds of things and so many more, do you not think it might be able to find a few creative solutions to our challenges or creative ways for us to reach our goals? Of course it will. That's what the brain does. And it's hardwired to do it because the brain will always answer a question you ask it. That's what the brain does. In fact, let's just prove it. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. I want you to yell out your answer at your desk. All right? Or you can whisper if you're embarrassed for yelling out by yourself. Okay? We're going to do this super quick. Here we go, guys. All right. Don't put this in the chat column, okay? This is for yourself. What's 2 plus 2? Okay? It's 4, in case some of you thought it was something else. What is your postal code? Think about that. Okay, you came up with it pretty quickly. Mine's M4J, 1R5. All right, what is the name of our prime minister? I will give some of you more time on this. Yes, it's the good-looking guy, Justin. Yes, Justin Timberlake. That's the guy. You're right. So yes, these are the things the brain will do once we ask it to do it. Okay, those are simple questions though. What if you ask the brain a question you just don't normally ask it? Well, let's find out. Let's see if the brain keeps on doing it. This time, for the fun of it, write your answers in the chat column. Okay, just fire off your answer as fast as you possibly can. Okay, here's the question. Let's have fun. You're trapped in a room. You got to get out. Your life depends on it. You have to get out of this room, but the door is locked. Okay, what's another way of getting out of the room? Okay, fire off your answers really, really quickly. Okay, just go right in there. Throw it what it is. Okay, here we go. So we've got window, call someone. Lisa, I like it. Roof, yeah. Jocelyn, roof. She's just going to power her way right through up to the roof. Okay, Jocelyn, you're stronger than the rest of us. What else? We got 3 people watching this show right now. Window, okay, lots of windows. All right. Let me ask you this, okay? If you want, you can just answer this question, yes, okay? Only for those who are yes. How many people thought of going out the window? Okay? All right. People saying yes. All right. How many people thought about going up through the ceiling and out, or through the ceiling and down onto the other side? Up through the ceiling, down, and onto the other side. So we're like, no, I would never do that. How many people here, I saw someone, I think it was Kathleen, who thought about just smashing the door down? Kathleen, you angry, angry woman. Yes, strong lady. That's a good answer. It's a good answer though. Okay. Nish is saying unlock the door. Okay. This is maybe Nish is talking about picking the door with a lock, because the door is locked, but if you had something with it, you can maybe pick the door. All right. For those of you who don't know, Nish is a criminal. This is important to know about Nish. I'm kidding you, Nish. I know you're not. But you see, what's happening here is that everybody is giving answers. Everyone's thinking of answers. And it's easy to come up with an answer when you ask the brain the question, because that's what the brain is hardwired to do. It'll always give it an answer once we give it the question. And this is something that I want to get you thinking about today, is what if you started changing your questions? What if you did that? What would happen for you? Well, you'd get different answers. All of a sudden, you change the questions, you get different answers, and those different answers lead you to greater levels of success. Those different answers allow you to see your life from a completely different perspective. So let me give you an example. What is something you've never done before that you could do to engage and to make your constituents feel engaged within your community? And you don't have to answer this right now in the chat board. You can if you like. But what is something you've never considered doing before that would engage the people within your community? Just by me asking your brain that question, your brain is currently working on it. And here's the fun part. It might not give you the answer right now. It might give you the answer in a week from now. But when you get that answer, you've just had now a new approach to the work that you do. Here's another question. Let's make it personal. Same kind of question though. What is something you could do that you've never done before to make your kids or your family, your brothers, your sister, your parents, whoever they might be, to make them feel more engaged in your life? And once again, by asking the question, your brain goes, hey, we've received a question here. Let's get an answer. Because that's what the brain is hardwired to do. It will always do it for you if you let it do it for you. And here's the last question I'm going to leave with you on this moment before we go into the 4th decision that all leaders make. This is a question I've been asking myself, and I think it'll work well for you too, because it's been amazing in the way that it's opening my mind to new creative solutions for my own life. Because let's face it, folks, I'm a professional speaker. I lost my job at the beginning of March. My wife worked for my company. She lost her job at the beginning of March because events were no longer happening. And so everything moved online, but there is nowhere close to the number of events online these days as there were when there were live events. They might come back, but they haven't been there. And so we had to ask ourselves these big questions because we have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and a mortgage. And all of a sudden we found ourselves going, oh, that's interesting. All those speaking engagements I had have been completely canceled. What happens now? And so here's a question that we decided to start asking ourselves, and it's really opened our eyes up to all kinds of creative things that we could possibly do that are different. Here's the question. What is something that you could do today to make this pandemic the best thing that's ever happened to you in your life? Or said differently, what's something you could do today to make this pandemic one of the best things that's ever happened to you in your life? That, to me, unlocks a whole slew of new ideas and new opportunities. And I will challenge you in saying that if you actually take a pen and paper tomorrow or the next day and you write that question down at the top of the paper and then journal about it, you'll start seeing yourself thinking about your job in different ways and thinking about your relationships with others in different ways. And all of a sudden, you are the one who has now made the decision to be a true leader and to be in control. And it's creativity. It's there. It's just waiting to be opened as a present in your room. And it's just a question as to whether or not you'll open it. You'll always have the answer to figuring out how to overcome that challenge. You'll always have the answer to figure out a new way to reach that goal. And you're only ever one question away from discovering what it is. So just ask. And those are the first 3 decisions that all leaders make. I implore you to continue to make these decisions as much as you possibly can. I've got 2 more decisions that I'm going to fly through. I know that I've got just a little bit of time left, so I want to make sure that I stay on time. But this is the 4th decision that all leaders make. We still having a good time? Woo! Yes, I heard that all the way from Saskatchewan. The great thing about Saskatchewan, you could look out your window, you could probably see me right now. That's just how beautifully flat it is across that land. Okay, how to lose an audience 101. Be pompous from Toronto and make a joke about flat land in Saskatchewan. Okay, I'm playing with you. We're having fun. All right, so the 4th decision that all leaders make. This is one that I think is important to talk about, especially as what we're going through right now. And this is the decision to have thicker skin. Okay, now think about that. To actually be tougher than maybe what you've been. To be stronger than what you've been. To have greater resilience to what you've had in the past. And I don't know about you, but in my life, and this has been well pre-pandemic, this has been for years, I have been I've just been so amazed at how many people that I've met who really are just wimps. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but they're very fragile. They're very soft. And it saddens me because I know they could be way stronger than what they are. I know that they could be way more powerful than what they give themselves credit for. And yet the slightest thing happens to them and they just turn into a puddle. They get a bad performance review at work and they go home and cry. Or maybe they don't get as many votes as they expected to get in a campaign they're running for, and they're really defeated by it. As if somehow they felt like they deserved all the votes that they thought they deserved. Maybe they didn't put as much work into it as they could have. Guess what? You're human. I've done this. We've all had those moments in our lives where we get angry because, we're upset about the result. But then if we're really honest with ourselves, we could be a little more truthful and realize that maybe we didn't put as much work as we possibly could have put in. And instead of just owning that, we choose to be soft. We choose to be fragile. I've seen this so often. We see somebody who has a difficult conversation with somebody and they just don't want to go back to work anymore. Or you have a constituent who calls in and complains all the time and it really knocks you down. And true leaders recognize that this pain is just part of the game. It's just part of life. And yet so many people are so afraid of experiencing any kind of pain that what they do is they do everything they can to avoid it, not knowing that by avoiding that pain, they're avoiding life. And we have to remember that pain is something that, yes, it's part of life, but it's also something that we can get used to. It's something that doesn't have to knock us down as much as we think it does. I mean, think about that, right? In life, there's so many examples of how we as human beings can just get used to things, right? My favorite example of this is that when you travel, you've done this before you go on vacation, and as soon as you get off the plane, you're in some sort of exotic country and you're like, wow, look at those animals. I mean, look at those mountains and look at the way that they build their houses here. And you're taking pictures of absolutely everything. And then 2 weeks later, after living in that area for 2 weeks, you kind of walk past that house and you don't even give it a second glance, or you don't really pay attention to those animals or the mountains anymore because you got used to it. And that's the human condition. There's nothing wrong with that. That's who we are. I had this happen to me in the Galapagos Islands one time, where if you've ever been to the Galapagos Islands, it doesn't take long after you get off the boat and you get to some of the islands, you look around and it's amazing because they've preserved life so beautifully there. So you'll get off the boat and there's a sea lion just sitting on the beach, or you'll be walking towards your hotel and a bunch of iguana are walking next to you. And when you're looking at all these things, you want to take pictures of everything, but then when you leave, you're not really seeing it as much as you did when you first got there. Now you're jumping on the boat, you're going home, and you're thinking, I think I just bought a sandwich from a dolphin. And you're like, I can't remember. So we get used to things. And that is okay. And it's especially okay when we get used to pain. And I know that might seem like a bit of an oxymoron. It might seem counterintuitive to you, but please hear me out, because true leaders understand this. You see, when they're about to make a decision and they know that it could cause a certain level of pain in their life, they don't stop themselves from doing it. It actually is an indicator that they're making the right decision. They know that by causing a certain level of pain in their life, that it means they're actually on track. And when the pain shows up, they've learned to not make it as painful as it actually is by reframing it. Now, here's a little trick. Okay, this is something I hope everybody on this call really takes to heart. It is a powerful way to live. It is an opportunity to really attract an incredible life when you understand the importance of reframing pain. It is so incredible when you know how to do that, and the better you become at it, the more exciting and happy your life becomes. I'll give you an example of this. So when I was, I guess it'd probably be in my late 20s or early 30s, I got my very first big review in a big newspaper. And the critic had come to the show that I had written and produced and starred in. And I got to tell you, it was just one of those shows that everything went perfect. And so we even got a standing ovation at the end of the show. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, of all the shows, this was the best one for this critic to come to. So a week later, the review comes out and I grab the paper and I go down to the park. I buy myself a coffee. I sit down. I'm so excited because I'm going to be reading these really great things about myself. I open the newspaper. There's a big picture of me, a full column in the newspaper. And I end up seeing line after line that just talked about how bad I was and how bad the show was and how it was a true waste of everybody's time. And I remember feeling so deflated. I thought, but we got a standing ovation. It was a great show. This critic didn't care. This critic didn't like the show. And now I knew hundreds of thousands of people were reading this article. In fact, I had made sure that I emailed everybody I knew to pick up the newspaper that day to make sure that they could read the article for themselves. Yeah, one of my smarter moves for sure. And so I'm sitting there and I'm on this bench and it's a beautiful day and people are walking by me with their coffees and their dogs and they're like, oh, how you doing? Beautiful day, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, go screw yourself. And I'm really feeling depressed. I'm really thinking that maybe I'm not cut out to do this. Maybe I'm not meant to be on stage. And after about 20 minutes of feeling sorry for myself, being a true victim, I started laughing because a realization hit me. It dawned on me in the moment. I thought to myself, hold on. Every person I admire, every person I look up to, every person I'm trying to be like and to have the same level of success as, has had a bad review. And in fact, they haven't just had bad reviews, they've actually had many bad reviews. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, I'm like, hold on, I'm now more like the people I'm trying to be like than I was without the bad review. I thought to myself, hold on, I'm in the game. I finally arrived. And it made me laugh. And it was a reframe in the moment that made me realize that this was part of my process to get to where I wanted to go. And not too long ago, I had a really wonderful chance to have dinner with one of the people that I was trying to be like. And I had a chance to tell, it was Martin Short in this case, I had a chance to tell Martin Short that story. And of course, I mean, he came back and he just decimated with me with all kinds of bad reviews he had received in his life. And it made my one bad review at that time feel like it wasn't that big of a deal. And this is the point, is that we have a choice in these moments. When we feel the pain, we can give up. We can convince ourselves that we don't have what it takes. We can tell ourselves that there's no sense of trying to aim for the stars anymore because this is just not meant to be. We can do that, or we can reframe it. We can look at it in a completely different way and allow it to inspire us and to make it realize that we are in fact on track. Now, pre-pandemic, if you went a week, 2 weeks, or a month and you didn't feel any pain at all, I would tell you something was wrong. I would tell you that you're not on track. I would tell you you really need to make sure that you're pushing yourself further to feel the pain. Because if you don't, all you're doing is you're allowing yourself to avoid life. You have a choice. When pain comes your way, you can be a victim and you can convince yourself that it's everybody else's fault and that you're just unlucky, or you can reframe the pain and turn it into something beautiful. You know, if you're going through maybe the pain of a negative relationship or a divorce, we know all kinds of people who've gone through that. Some people on this call have gone through that as well. You have a choice and you get to look at it as a really painful experience, or you can reframe it into looking for the beauty that could come out of it, looking for the ways that it added value to your life, or all the beautiful things together you as a team did do for your children. We got to look at the other side of the equation. Or let's say you're going through a particularly difficult time with your constituents right now, and they're not necessarily getting the message, and it's causing you a certain level of pain. How can you reframe that to cause yourself to become a better leader, a better communicator, or a better person? Where's the opportunity? You see, when we stay in our victimhood, we put ourselves into a position where we have zero control. And yet when we reframe the pain into something different, we put ourselves into a position where we are the ones who get to call the shots. And true leaders understand that when you put yourself into that level of control, you are the one that then creates your happiness, that creates your success. And that's within every single person watching me say these words right now. And I hope that you embrace that. I hope you recognize how much of a role that can play in your life. People who are true leaders, they have thicker skin. They understand the thicker their skin, the more they win. They recognize that when they're about to make a decision and realize that it could come with a certain level of pain, that quite often that means it's the right decision to make. And I hope that you wrap your arms around pain a little bit more often and get excited when it comes your way, because it means you're moving forward to something great. And that's the fourth decision that all leaders make. The first one, we got to take a moment to take pride in what we do before we do it in order to change the way we do it. The second one, I talked about the importance of not letting fear be a joke that we play on our lives. Number three, creativity is this beautiful presence sitting in everybody's room. All we got to do is ask ourselves the right questions, and then we get to open it for the first time. And of course, as I said, without a little pain, we're just never going to gain. So the fifth and final decision to close this off, and then at the end of this, if we do have time for questions, or if you have any, I'd be happy to answer them. We can have some fun with each other. By the way, Rennie Harper, you are right. Saskatchewan is far from flat. And in fact, I have decided that I will walk across Saskatchewan for opening my big mouth and making fun of your amazing province just to prove that you are right. All right? You can hold me to it. We'll do it together. So the fifth and final, just come to Nipawin. Nipawin, my goodness. Nipawin is where you always win. Yeah, that's a great rhyme that I've just put together. You can use that. You can put that on your slogan, on your town sign. Nipawin, always a win. All right. Those are my creative juices flowing in the middle of a presentation. Love you, Rennie. Thanks for that. Okay, so the fifth decision that I've really noticed that great leaders make time and time again, and once again, this is going to sound a bit counterintuitive, but it's the decision to set goals that seem like they're slightly impossible, to aim for goals that are crazy, like to reach for things that seem out of your grasp. And people think, well, why would I try to aim for something that is impossible? Well, let me explain. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you have just felt that feeling of like, I can't believe I did that? Like in a good way, right? Not a bad way, but like you delivered a speech somewhere, you were nervous about it, and then you did it. And then you got off stage, maybe it was at some wedding, and everyone told you how funny you were and how great it was. You're like, I can't believe I did that. Or maybe you went bungee jumping, and after you get off the bungee cord, you look back up to see how, high you would just jump from. You're like, I can't believe I did that. Or you're looking out the window on the way back from some vacation, and you've just gone through the Amazon jungle, whatever it is, and you're like, I can't believe I did that. It's an amazing feeling, right? I have this sometimes. I'm sure some of the men that are watching this right now, you've had this feeling too. You wake up on a Sunday morning, you look over to your partner there, and you think to yourself, I can't believe I did that. I certainly leveled up there. How did I pull this off? Does she even know my faults? I've had that experience too. You're not alone. But we do this, right? And it's not just us as regular people going through life in Canada that go through this. Famous people go through this all the time. You see them in interviews and they talk about this, right? People like, Chris Hadfield, you've heard him say how he was up in outer space at the space station for so long, looking down at planet Earth, like thinking, I can't believe, I was once a little kid looking up at the stars and now I'm in outer space playing the guitar. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it on some level. It just feels so completely far-fetched. Or quite often you'll hear this with some famous singer. They'll be on stage and they're performing now for 20,000 people, and they're realizing that just 1 year earlier, they were playing songs in a bar, and back then they couldn't even get their boyfriend to come to the bar to support their show that night. And now they're on stage in front of 20,000 people singing a song about that douchebag. And they're realizing, hey, you know what? I can't believe I got here. Why do we do this? Why is it that we're so incredulous? Why are we so absolutely amazed by the fact that we've actually done something special? Why is that such a shock to us? Well, the reason it is, and this has been researched many times, and I'm sure many of you have heard of this term before, and if you haven't, let me share it with you now. It's because of something called the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome. Now, the imposter syndrome, many of you may or may not know that it was a term that first originated with in medical schools, where people would be graduating from medical school and they've gone through the entire program, and they're now going to be put into a position where they're given a significant amount of responsibility, where they can inject something into a person's body, where they can prescribe a drug to an individual that they don't know, or maybe do a surgery. And these people were beginning to have real anxiety around that. Like, how would anybody want to give me that much responsibility? Don't they know the anxiety or insecurities that I have about me as a person? And so in many medical schools, they actually bring in doctors who have had many years of experience to really talk people off the ledge and say, hey, no, you are good enough. You do have what it takes, and you do have to trust yourself, and you don't have to feel like an imposter. You don't have to feel like you are some foreigner and that you don't have what it takes to be the person that you now are. And this is something that I want to get you thinking about as I close off this presentation. It's a sad thing because, as I was saying to you before, that anytime you ask the brain a question, it will always give you an answer. What I didn't tell you was that sometimes it'll give you a very bad answer because it's been conditioned to do that. So what happens is when you say to yourself, who am I to have this kind of success? Who am I to have this kind of partner? Who am I to have this much joy? Who am I to introduce this new legislation to my town? And the brain, when it gets asked that question, quite often will give you a negative answer. It starts saying, well, here's the reasons why you're not good enough. You're not old enough. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're not fast enough. Or your parents aren't educated, or whatever it might be. It'll give millions. And then the brain goes, oh, well, there it is. Okay, I got my answer. Thank you. And that is something that happens to all of us, myself included. As I said, I come from a working class family, and for me to have a life where I make a living over the years, traveling the world on stage, I'm often finding myself thinking, I can't even believe I do this. And it still sometimes gets in the way of me maybe being my best because I have anxiety and stress and worry about whether or not I'm good enough to do that job. So we all go through it, but we have to have a way of pushing ourselves further. Because as my friend Glenn said to me not too long ago, really stuck with me. He said, isn't it sad to think that so many people in life will die and never see themselves as being as amazing as everyone else around them saw themselves as? And I thought that was true, because you are way more amazing than probably what you give yourself credit for. And the only way to really learn that and to experience that is to set impossible goals, to set goals that feel like they're out of your reach. And mathematically, that actually, there's a good argument for doing that. You see, you could set goals that you know you can achieve, and that to me is just bad math. Because when you set goals that are beyond your reach, what you do is you will almost always accomplish one of two things. The first is that you will accomplish reaching a goal that's pretty close to that crazy goal you set for yourself. And that goal will be much higher than any reasonable goal you would have set for yourself. The second thing that more often than not happens is that you end up reaching that crazy goal. Because as soon as you set that target, your brain goes, okay, there's that crazy target. How the heck am I going to pull this off? And then the brain will start giving you better answers. And as it gives you those better answers, you start talking to people, you start doing certain things. Incrementally, you get closer and closer to that goal. And when you achieve that goal, you will have proven to yourself that you were in fact stronger and more powerful and more amazing than you were giving yourself credit for. But you can't know it unless you set the goal. And it's when we set those goals that we actually allow ourselves to take any experience that we might be in today and make it that much more meaningful and that much more durable and that much more enduring or less enduring. A great example of this, and one of my favorites, is from Nelson Mandela. Now, Nelson Mandela, as you all know, was wrongfully put in prison, basically for just standing up for the rights of African people in South Africa at that time. And he was in jail for 28 years, I believe it was. 28 years, 27, 28 years. And here's an individual who every day it would be his job, along with the other prisoners, to go out into the open common area, and they'd be given a great big boulders, and they'd have a chip, like a rock chipper, and they would be chipping away at the rock and putting it into small pieces, and essentially making gravel. And they'd put these into bags, into wheelbarrows, and take it away, and then they'd go back to some more boulders. He did that all day, every day. And now one day, one of the wardens came up to the political prisoners, put them all into the back of a truck, and then drove for quite a while to the edge of Robben Island, and took them to an area where they didn't know and hadn't been before. And they all got out, and they were all facing this great big rock cliff. It was actually limestone. And the warden said, "Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to do a job that is going to be the hardest job you've ever done in your life. It's going to be back-breaking work. I'm going to ask you to chip major pieces off the side of that wall, put them into wheelbarrows, take them down to the end of the road, come back and do it all over again in the blinding light of that limestone." He said, "But if you just do this job for 6 months, you'll be done with it, and I'll get you a different job that'll be much easier on the island. Just give me 6 months." And as Nelson Mandela tells that story, he said, "You know what? It turns out that warden wasn't very good at math, because we never did that job for 6 months." He said, "We ended up doing that job for the next 13 years. And think about that. 13 years. If I asked you, could you do that? And you could chip away every day, what would you say to me? Well, it depends what your answer would be depending on what you would be looking forward to in the future. And for Nelson Mandela, while he was chipping that rock, he had a crazy goal. And that was to unite South Africa, to free South Africa, and to become the president of South Africa. And so here's an individual who, while he was chipping it away, he had created a goal for himself to make him work his best, to make him stay strong, to make him not be beaten up mentally and to not be beaten up physically, so that he could reach his dreams. And it was because he had something to focus on, it made his day, as he said it, durable. It made it so that it was doable. It was something that he could get through. And I feel like it's a great example of what we could all do in life, myself included. If we set goals during this pandemic, during this crazy COVID crisis that seem so far out of reach, that seem kind of crazy, what would it do to the person who wakes up every single day? The person who's now looking at that goal, who's now thinking about that goal, who would that person be? And how would they be different from the person who's watching me say these words right now? You see, we have the opportunity to change ourselves in any moment. of any day. And all we have to do is make the kinds of decisions that other leaders make to make it happen. It's not magic. Nobody on this planet was predestined for greatness more than anybody else. Greatness comes from within. Greatness is a choice. And I'm right along there with you. While I've made some choices that have allowed me to have a certain level of success and a certain level of happiness, as a man who's 47 years old in a couple of weeks with a couple of young kids and trying to get through this crazy crisis all along with you, I am finding myself having to double down on my own decisions and to really get truthful with myself and ask myself, what do I need to do today to be the best that I can possibly be today, and thus possibly the best that I can be tomorrow and every day after that? This is not someone preaching from the mountaintop to you, telling you how to live your life and telling you how to do things. This is somebody going through this presentation, even though I'm the one saying the words, but I'm going through it just as much as you are too. And I find that when we dig deep and we actually stop for a second and think about taking pride in what we do before we do it, it changes the way we do it. I think that every time I've ever had a moment where I've made the pain gain list and I've taken a look at what I stand to lose and what I stand to gain, it always gives me the courage to do the thing I'm most afraid of doing. Whenever I've had a challenge or whenever I've had a goal, I always ask myself those questions, like the one that I shared with you earlier on. What do I need to do today to make this pandemic one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life? And when I do that, it leads me to getting ideas that I wouldn't have had before. And the fourth decision that I want you to consider making is to just have slightly thicker skin and recognize that a little bit of pain means you're on track. And the fifth and final thing, as you just heard me say, set goals that are crazy. Do stuff that blows your mind. Prove to yourself how incredible you are by setting goals that feel like they're so far beyond the person you think you are. And you'll only prove to yourself how amazing you've always been. And so those are my 5 decisions that I wanted to share with you today. I want to thank you for giving me some time with you. The work you guys do is so important. I recognize that. I want to thank Katie as well for allowing me to be a part of this. It has been such a great experience being able to add value to your day. I know you've been talking a lot about work. I hope that I've been able to give you something that was a little bit different. So with that said, I've gone 3 minutes over time. I apologize for that. If we do have any questions, I can see that Rennie is telling me you've just received $50 for that Walk Across Saskatchewan challenge. We'll start a fundraiser. There you go. There you go. You know what? I've got nothing else to do. All right. So maybe I'll just come to Saskatchewan and just walk for a while. So I'm going to the Q&A here. I don't see any questions and answers. And if there are, you can fire them in there really quickly. But I think, though, also in the interest of time and to make sure that I don't get in trouble with Katie, I will pass it back to Mike over here.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for that awesome presentation. It brightens the day to hear some motivational stuff every once in a while. So thank you for that. At this time, I guess we'll lead into a break if there are no more questions for Stuart. And if there are, you can put them in the chat. So I'm not seeing anything either, Stuart. So thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it today. And we'll lead into a break with that. Thank you.
My pleasure. And if anyone has questions that they have later, by all means, fire them off to me on LinkedIn or let's get connected. And if you don't feel comfortable asking them right now, I'm always around, here to be your friend. So thanks, Mike, and thanks to everyone for having me.